we have the immediate context now of the military saying that the Golden Temple was among places in Amritsar and other places that were targeted with both drones and missiles. And of course, the Indian air defense system was able to thwart these attempted attacks. We have some figures also. The military says that at least 600 drones at multiple locations, one day 26, another day 36, were attempted to be sent in by Pakistan. This takes us firmly into the realm of drone wars. If you were to look at what we've seen in the past few days and what shape and form these drone wars took, how would you assess it, Commodore?
So, good evening, Barkha, and thank you for finally getting onto this topic of drones. After the dust is settled from all the BrahMos and scalps. But yes, it definitely is the next gen of warfare now come knocking on our doors. So it's worth having a good look at this particular topic. The way the drone war has worked out in this particular engagement or skirmish or whatever terminology people want to use is actually a mix of the older style usages, what have developed, of unmanned vehicles, what have developed through the 80s, 90s, and I would say just a glimpse of the future, the more disruptive, the more innovative, and frankly, the more dangerous escalatory uses. So, if you look at the more traditional uses, the use as for all the basically dull, dirty, dangerous kind of tasks, triggering the air defenses, mapping the electronic warfare, masking the approach of a proper manned strike at the end of it. There were some attempts at mass, I would think, from both sides. Now, remember, we are all operating off what has been released by both sides. And obviously, there is a lot of layers of IW involved in it. So I'm kind of trying to stick to what was covered by our DG Air Ops, because I think that was the most comprehensive account of, and we can take that at least as kind of bracketing what is genuinely in the realm of truth. So we did see some attempts at mass from their side, but definitely those were, I would say, uncoordinated masses in the sense that each drone operating as an individual. I don't think we have seen true swarming. We did see some attempt at coordination. There were hints of coordination between massed attack of drones and artillery, or massed attack of drones and maybe even their manned aircraft. Missiles and UAVs. Again, if you trace them back, the systems back, they're so different in the sense that at best you can hope for a coordinated attack, but definitely not any tight collaboration and cooperation between the UAVs and the missiles. So I would say, all in all, some people are actually calling it that this was the 1990s style warfare of UAVs more than what was anticipated as the absolute next gen swarm attack. Yeah, that's how I would characterize it. Pretty much redux of Bekaa Valley and stuff like that.
Right. Let me get to a question on the coordination that you speak about, right? Artillery and UAVs, artillery and missiles that you think is tougher to do, artillery and aircraft. Now, for example, when I was reporting in Jammu, what was happening now, I don't know if this is what you'd call coordination, but the border, the line of control and the international border was witnessing massive shelling on the ground. And in the air, the battles were drones as well as missiles. I don't know coordinated or not, but certainly today the statement from the military is that both drones and missiles were used to try and target the Golden Temple. In Amritsar, we know over some of the military bases, kamikaze drones were brought down by India's air defense system. This coordination, could you elaborate a little bit on it? Because it really, like just speaking as a generalist, it seemed to be that there were certainly attempts at artillery and drones for sure, so that ground and air was both in a way engaged. But we do have instances where drones and missiles were both sent in particular when the conflict seemed to peak on the 10th of May, hours before a halt in hostilities was announced.
From a technical perspective, what I mean by coordination is they would have at best shared a coordinated schedule. That means a time slot within which a certain set of targets were to be targeted independently by the UAV systems as well as the other vector, whatever it was, artillery, missiles, etc. They would definitely have a coordinated target list, and therefore may have been overlapping, engagement times. There may even have been a slightly more complex pattern in terms of distracting our air defenses so that they focus more on a particular zone and try and sneak in something on the other side. So that's what I would call coordination. But that requires a fair degree of pre-planning. It's a fairly rigid plan. Your UDA cycle on this is definitely longer. You're not able to react to things as you see them on the ground. So, for example, even if the UAVs discovered something really interesting on the ground which they wanted to engage, they would not really be able to shift their focus onto that. The much more vicious, wicked forms of collaboration that you can expect in future, which is when the drones will actually move on to something called seek and destroy, wherein as the drones are surveilling the area, whatever targets you're uncovering, you're able to engage those targets either autonomously by the drones themselves, or bring in these vectors from outside, because your network has extended and proliferated this information, this greater situational awareness which has been created by the initial wave of drones. You've proliferated across all vectors, and frankly, you can take it to any extent wherein the vectors are free to fire on their own. You can disaggregate the vectors so that they are literally operating as gun by gun, like the Ukrainians, with almost no command control layers in the middle. You can imagine the kind of reduction in engagement cycles that can take place by doing that. So that's what I mean by these were not collaborations in that respect. These were more in the nature of coordination, slightly old style, slightly structured, fairly slow, clumsy UDA.
Yeah. So here's my question. A lot has been said and acknowledged and applauded about how India's air defense was able to intercept these drones, and when the missiles came in, the missiles as well. But there is a question of Pakistan's game here, which clearly seems to be to normalize, or they tried to in those 4 days to almost normalize drones. So you would remember that even after the halt in hostilities announced by India, I remember being in Jammu, and 2 hours after that, we saw the same orange streaks in the air. The drones were back. A day after that, also, there were erratic sort of attempts at sending in these drones, and some airlines had to cancel their flights. Now, my question is it that is there a level of asymmetry here that even though the Indian air defense has shown itself to be spectacularly efficient at taking these drones down, is it cheaper for the Pakistanis to send in these drones and a greater effort for us to make sure that they don't drop anywhere and hurt anybody?
So, I mean, there are multiple aspects to the question that you just asked. One is acceptability of drones. For some reason, we seem to have normalized it that a drone attack is not the same as a missile attack. But finally, when you see the kinetic impact of a warhead, it's really the warhead, and more than the warhead, it's the intention with which that particular action was carried out. So even a non-lethal action, but carried out with a sinister intent, is actually a hostile act. Now the point is, it depends on what is your threshold and how you have, how the victim has convinced himself got himself to a stage of arousal where he is willing to take a particular provocation as crossing the threshold or not. Now, it's actually a very fascinating thing, and this classically comes under that gray zone warfare. How dark can the gray be before it is deemed to be black? And that's why you'll realize that it's the initiator gets the initiative, and therefore he gets to turn the heat up and down. It's a fascinating subject. It's a pretty long subject. I'm sure that our strategic levels need to be or must be working on this, because you're pretty much prone to manipulation from outside if you declare a particular level or not. But anyway, I'm staying well beyond my area of expertise. So let's get back to the other one about cost of the cost of this is actually more the attack versus defense problem. Attack is always cheaper than defense. You get to focus your effort in a particular time zone. You can activate your resources more optimally. You tend to get far more effect, the end effect, whatever effect you may have chosen, on the attack than on the defense. Now, this is a whole question of strategy and doctrine. I would say more strategy, whether you adopt the offense or you adopt the defense. You can see it even in their, even in the air battles, that even if you take the PAF's claims as absolute truth, the point is that our air attack still got through. So even if you accept that their defenses worked spectacularly and all the kills that they claimed were true, but what about the targets that they were supposed to be protecting? And those targets were still hit. So actually, even day one, where people are feeling hurt about claims and counterclaims, the point is that our target list was hit. Now,
right.
So attack versus defense is a much bigger problem. It's enmeshed in strategy. Personally, if you look at it, attack is always the preferred form for the underdog. Attack is always the more efficient form when you're talking about cost effectiveness of return on investment of whatever you were hoping to achieve. And in any case, defense can make sure you don't lose, but defense making you win is pretty much logically impossible. So it kind of boils down to that. If I'm coming across as a hawk, then I'm trying to be logical about it, but that's how it is. Attack versus defense is that kind of an equation.
So let's talk for a moment about India's attack, right? There were two phases to this attack. One was, of course, the precision strikes on the terror bases, after which we said we would be non-escalatory if Pakistan would, and Pakistan didn't do that. Pakistan's response, in fact, was to send in what our military called waves of drones, which we were just talking about, right? After which we started precision targeting their air defense with great success, whether in Lahore or in Karachi, and later their air bases. It began with the air defense system and radars in Lahore and in Karachi and in a place in Gujarat in Pakistan, and went on to their air bases. We've spoken a lot about how Pakistan attempted to use drones. How about our approach to drone warfare? Not in defense mode, but in attack mode. How do you analyze that, or lessons from that?
So actually, our wave of attacks, the subsequent day 2, day 3, and onwards, kind of also ended up throwing up a very clear indication of the asymmetry between the weight of attack that drones can create and the weight of attack that conventional a proper classic air force can create over target. So even in those attacks, there were enough hints. I think the DG Aerops has kind of given us enough hints about the fact that radars were targeted, and those radars, I imagine, were definitely targeted with things like HAROPs, which are purpose designed for that purpose. So when you're talking about point targets, soft targets like radars, definitely UAVs are the better method of taking them out, because they have limited effect, but they have that great precision. They have that ability to sneak in and take those risks while you're they are the ultimate can opener. But when it comes to actually destroying targets, and by here I really mean what we call area targets, not point targets, targets which will absorb a significant amount of kinetic energy before they are actually damaged or destroyed. Now, here there is no substitute for weight of attack, and frankly, you've seen it. Between the hammer and the scalp and the And there were some videos also of small UAVs dropping bombs. And on the other hand, there are some very clear buildings which could not have been anything other than a BrahMos. Now, the Indian Air Force has not clarified exactly which attack was done by which, but it's pretty easy to guess, which one would have been brought by what. So the stark asymmetry between the effects. That is, the HAROPs probably were the can opener enabling the attacks, and at the same time the actual kinetics were done by the much heavier weapons. And a hole in a runway cannot be made by a small UAV. It would need the mass of a BrahMos to dig up that, and that is inescapable. So it's a classic, the full spectrum of I think how we have used our drones. I'm sure there was enough chatter about waves of expendable air targets, masking the approach of our strike waves, and you can put the whole picture together. But again, like I said, this is classic 80s, 90s style combination of UAVs and air power.
So let me ask. I apologize in advance if this is somewhat of a dumb question, but I get your distinction between when you talk about coordinated attacks using both missiles and drones. You're talking about a very planned coordination, whereas this was more old style, trying to distract your adversary, opening the can, as it were, and then coming in with the kinetic action from somewhere else. But the fact is that whether it is India, which is clearly, as you just mentioned, used the HAROPs and then got in the heft from, let's say, a BrahMos. Today, an official video released by the army seems to suggest, without elaborating, that Pakistan used the Shaheen, which is nuclear-capable ballistic missile. The video doesn't say more. The video doesn't tell us where this was used, where it was intercepted. Was this the missile that was intercepted in Sirsa? We have no idea. But this is all that the video shows. Now, when I look at this as a very sort of layperson, what I'm seeing is, okay, Pakistan was in the blackouts in the cities, in the densely populated cities of Amritsar, of Jalandhar, of Bathinda, of Jammu, of Samba, of Arispura. And in the meantime, they were deploying the Shaheen, let's say, because that's what our army indicates, elsewhere. Now, when you look at the use of both drones and missile in these 4 days, you're saying this was not to a plan? This was a kind of uncoordinated use by Pakistan of all of this weaponry?
By uncoordinated, I meant the detailed tactical coordination or not. As far as calibrating the escalation, now what you would be actually is what we are seeing, or what our side would be seeing is a combination of all kinds of elements from their side, ranging from rogue elements wanting to escalate, unhappy with the way the main force of their command control structures is reacting to our side. There could be rogue elements to, completely irresponsible elements, because a ballistic missile is indistinguishable as what kind of warhead it is carrying, and therefore it could trigger an extreme response from our side. So you could be seeing all kinds of things. It could even be, they're setting a new normal wherein a ballistic missile is now expected to be assumed as conventional warhead from our side, and it's kind of just upping that frog in the boiling water, and keep raising temperature. So you could be seeing a very, very sophisticated, calibrated approach from their side, or you could be seeing a completely chaotic. I think it's hard to tell. I'm sure it will take some time before our side is able to decipher what did they actually see. But I was surprised to hear that Shaheen, because one would imagine, again, as a layperson, that a ballistic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead would be seen as a natural trigger for follow-on strikes, even before the impact has taken place.
Yeah.
So this is something which truly is alarming and really raises the temperature quite a bit.
if we were to also look at the China and Turkey factors here, the debris of these intercepted drones that were basically shot down by India's air defense system. Some images were released today. Some images, you're seeing some of them. Some images have been released in the past in the dossiers that were presented at the formal military briefings. So we have the Yiha Turkish drones, we have the Chinese missiles, and so on. You know, is there a sense that India's air defense, this is now about a kind of made in India versus made in China, with China being the ghost in the battlefield? There are some experts who suggest that China's technology for itself is very different from the technology that it is supplied to Pakistan. I don't know enough about that, but I'm just wondering at how you're looking at this whole China Turkey technology and drones, and how they were deployed by Pakistan.
So, on the one hand, I suspect Pakistan would be almost very keen for us to discover that they're using Turkish and Chinese drones, because that conveys their message that these are the countries that have our back. On the other hand, we are trying to convey a message of indigenization, which is quite starkly contrasting. Now, I think these are apples and oranges. That it's hard to. I don't think they're talking about, they're referencing the same thing. What would be interesting is how much magazine depth they had, as in how much wind did they have left in their lungs when finally the ceasefire was called. That would be almost directly related to whether they had had an indigenous capability. Were they able to afford enough stocks, or were they at the absolute end of their stocks? On our side, the indigenization can be, it has a particular context. It needs to be pushed in preparation for war, but in terms of actual war fighting, it could actually turn. It has to be played differently. For example, in gray zone warfare, you want to operate in the gray zone. Are you going to use everything stamped made in India, or are you going to actually actively choose to assemble things out of made in China elements? So it's something which it has its particular place. It has its place in the prep for war. It has its place in the classic black and white warfare. But one shouldn't, overdo it in terms of when it comes to, like, for example, innovation. Now, innovation is the new thing that people have brought in, the ability to create newer and newer wicked effects on a much shorter time cycle. So if one side has a preponderance, has economic superiority, and you're trying to develop these super exquisite weapon systems, which classically do take 10-year, 15-year development cycles, the opponent would be mathematically illiterate to try and match you and develop a weapon system which competes with that. He will go to the other extreme and try and invalidate your investments by operating on a much shorter cycle. So they really won't care about, as long as that operational trick works for even 2 weeks, they're perfectly happy with it, because they're ready to move on. So they're going to the other extreme and working on a 3-month development cycle kind of pinpricks that they can create to combat your superiority in the 15-year dev cycle equipment. So it's a full spectrum that we need to look at. It's not just one particular weapon system category or something like that. I'm not sure I've answered your question, in a focused manner, but
I've lost audio. So say something. I just suddenly lost you. I don't know why I suddenly lost you. Okay, just reconnect there, and there you are. I think. Say something, sir. It's probably a loose headphone.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Is this better?
I think we've covered the full spectrum, from high-tech drone warfare to headphones that have a loose jack, which is a good moment of good metaphor for all kinds of things. No, okay, I understood your response completely in as much as I can as a layperson. I have a last question. Let's look ahead. We haven't yet spoken about artificial intelligence. We see even with commercial pilots, GPS spoofing, for example, right? We've seen technology be the great disruptor. And you're saying that even though we saw modern warfare this time, this was still an old-fashioned version of modern warfare. What is it that India needs to prepare for how these conflicts are going to look like in the future? Given that the operation is not over, we have officially said Operation Sindoor is not over. Given that we have no reason to believe that Pakistan is going to end its asymmetric warfare against India, for the next conflict, God forbid should it come, but it might, how should we guard ourselves, protect ourselves, anticipate the very rapid evolutions in artificial intelligence and constantly changing technology?
So, I mean, for the fact that the operation is not yet actually been terminated, what we need to be doing for tomorrow is obviously best left to the generals and the air marshals, because they would obviously be focusing on reloading their
Sure.
magazines and replenishing
Sure.
stuff that has been consumed. But I would rather focus at the inevitable, in 2028 or 2030. This round is going to repeat, because they obviously have not learned their lesson from all their rhetoric. So if you look at that kind of a horizon, I think what we need to do is look at the fact that we are that many times their size in terms of economics. How do we bring that to bear? If we start driving it down towards the lowest cost kind of form of warfare, it kind of plays into their hands, in the sense that we will not be able to impose our superiority over them. So therefore, the fight needs to be taken into the far more high-tech zone, wherein, for example, if we want to shorten our UDA cycle, wherein we are able to react to very, very dynamic situations on the ground and retarget, etc. By having a much more rapid tempo of our of the pace of our operations, not in terms of a prefixed plan, but in terms of actually responding to stuff on the ground. So clearly, we will have to bring in our tech to bear. Now, this is a paradoxically, it's an advantage both ways, in the sense that swarming, AI, these are all new tech. And therefore, while we can bring our technology prowess to bear upon Pakistan because of our advantage, at the same time, we are not that disadvantaged against China, because these are new technologies. Nobody really has actually deployed them fully, and therefore we're not lagging already. In that we have a chance of keeping up with them. So it's a strange sweet spot, wherein if we focus on swarming, if we focus on really wicked swarming, by that I mean all kinds of effects embedded into that. I'm talking about, what I really mean is collaborative robotics. Now, swarming is a misused term. Generally, any mass of that's a melee. That's not a swarm. A true swarm is a set of collaborating robots with all kinds of multiple effects. We're talking about deliberately disaggregating effects across as many platforms so that they become survivable, rather than creating exquisite platforms, the Rafales and the F-22s. Now here again, taking off from this, clearly, as we've seen from the most successful of our actions, manned aircraft are I mean, they're not finished as yet. They're the only ones which are going to really be able to deliver kinetics. So it's the convergence of manned aircraft, all the attributes of manned aircraft. You basically get human intelligence, cunning, etc., on the edge of the battlefield. How do we combine that with all of these swarms and drones? So the true integration, which goes by the name of teaming, that's the classic meaning of the word teaming, wherein the drones and the aircraft, they compensate for each other's weaknesses, and they need to be netted together in such a way that a single pilot can still handle a swarm of drones. That's really the area in which we need to focus, so that you can imagine the actual integrated air defense that we are going to encounter when we go up against, God forbid, we need to go up against our real adversaries. We're going to need a can opener, and we're not going to be able to bash our way through, because we're not going to be numerically superior. So that's where we need to really focus our think like the underdog, build wicked capabilities which bring together disparate technologies in wicked forms. I think we have the brains and the tech to do it. Uh, One last point about this would be, we need to look at AI a little more realistically. There is this whole lethal autonomous weapon systems, legislation being planned by the UN and stuff like that. But I think that should be viewed like the NPT, designed to keep the insiders inside and the outsiders outside. It's probably yet another very hypocritical element attempt at making sure that people like us don't rise. So we need to make sure that we look at the technology for what it's worth. Don't get sucked into this whole AI is going to take over the world and demons. Look at exactly how do we want to use it for our workforce. Do we want centaurs? Do we want minotaurs? Do we want the human commanding an army of drones, or do we want the hard parts which are difficult for AI to do? Those are handled by humans. Validation of targets, for example, and the algorithmizable portions of it are handled by computers. So there are many issues in this. We should be doing all of the above. I don't think we should get into manned aircraft versus drones. That would be an absolutely foolish thing to do. This is pretty much the spread of how I hope that we're going to be doing it. Abhimanyu, not a jihadi or a janissary. We need to be making sure that we create Abhimanyus, objects that don't really need to have a phenomenal exit plan, but are not interested in dying. They are more interested in creating an effect, as opposed to a dumb jihadi whose only interest is to sacrifice himself.
Create Abhimanyus, not jihadis. Create something that lasts, not something that blows itself or himself up. I think that can be the brilliant last word. I was just listening to you, thinking of humans commanding an army of drones. 10 years ago, we would have called that science fiction. Now it's not even the future. It's already the present. We're already there. And I think one of the interesting things you said, Commodore, was think like the underdog. Not because you are the underdog, but because you need to be chalak, cunning, almost, with these new technologies as they're evolving, and so I think that was really interesting. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Learned a lot from you, and this is, as you said, this is already our present, and we've got to get ahead of the curve. And I think we've shown some spectacular air power in this battle, which will continue to be our strength. But in the meantime, sometimes also think like the small guy, create Abhimanyus, not jihadists. Thank you, Commodore Maulankar. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.